in my initial PvE review of DeadEye, I really wrote this set off. I found it to be totally useless in PvE, and by the numbers, it was in fact a significant decrease in DPS versus wearing no gear set at all. And I wasn't particularly impressed with its performance in PvP either, despite numerous other people swearing by it at the time. I was roundly criticized for my view on its PvP value, but the fact of the matter was that in a fully optimized DeadEye build, and I mean fully stacked critical hit damage up to 320%, you were generally only hitting an armor capped target for 20k damage per bullet. And since most people are cruising the DZ at the armor cap, and they have between 4 and 500k toughness, most people have somewhere between 100 and 120k health. Everyone also has heal, which heals them for around 40k, depending on which mod they use and how much skill power they have, etc, etc. Meaning that with a perfectly stacked DeadEye build, I would still need a total of around 7 bullets to drop a target in PvP if they land their heal. Now to me, this was really nice, don't get me wrong, and it was certainly really effective, but it wasn't, oh my god, amazing, and I said as much in my review. I thought the damage was good, but that other YouTube videos that I saw at the time were being highly selective in their footage, creating an impression that this gear set would instantly melt targets when I really did not think that this was the case. Fast forward now to the new PvP meta, and two things have happened. Firstly, massive tweak to the PvP damage modifier, meaning that we are now dealing 20% more damage to our target when we shoot them. As a result, burst damage has become a way more important way of dealing damage, since it's now possible to burst your target down before they have the chance to react. This in turn has had a huge impact on the PvP weapon meta with the rise of the shotgun, namely centered around firing an MH70 into someone's face to bring them down in 1 or 2 shots, propped up by the huge amounts of free headshot damage you get from Sentry's Call and the stacking bonus that you get should you need a second round to finish off your target. Not to mention things like booster shot, pulse, or tapping smart cover. Burst damage is now well and truly a thing, and shotguns are well and truly a thing, and these days every second message in my comments and on Twitter is asking how people can combat the Sentry Shotgun meta. And having another look at DeadEye in this PvP meta, I think it's fairly safe to say that this gear set is without a doubt the best and really only counter to the shotgun meta, and is more broadly what I would say is the best PvP gear set that you can get your hands on if PvP is your thing and you aren't looking for cheesy one-shot shotgun kills. So, what makes DeadEye so strong? Well, let's take a look at the numbers to understand it more deeply. So, there are actually 4 types of weapon damage in the game. There's normal white damage, which are body shots. There's orange damage, which are crits. There's red damage, which are headshots. And then there's, well, orange damage again, but that's critical headshots, right? Both crits and headshots rely on their own modifiers, which are critical hit damage and bonus headshot damage. And the value of these modifiers are balanced around the chance that you'll get one of these modifiers to proc, which in the case of crit is capped at 60%, and in the case of headshot damage is capped only by a player's skill. You can of course get 100% headshot damage if you're good enough to hit your mark every time. So, what makes DeadEye so powerful? Well, in short, imagine having an M1A marksman rifle with, say, 220% headshot damage, which is pretty realistic given that this is where most people's bonus headshot damage will sit after you mod. Now, imagine adding 100 headshot damage to that, bringing it to a total of 320% bonus headshot damage. Now, imagine being able to hit your headshots 100% of the time, not just against PvE targets, but against PvP targets. Now you're getting a sense of why this set is as strong as it is. The way it gives you 100% critical hit chance, boosted by up to 320% bonus critical hit damage, means that it is essentially giving you significantly higher than average headshot damage while shooting at the body. And you don't even need to be aiming down sights. You can literally hip fire this thing while you're doing this to achieve the same results. So how much damage does this do in the post 20% PvP damage meta? Well, as I've said, generally speaking, most people in the DZ are rocking around 400 to 500k toughness, meaning that they'll be at the armor cap and they'll have around 100 to 120k HP. An optimized DeadEye build with a decent pulse, not even one that is fully optimized, will chunk someone at the armor cap for around 26k damage, meaning that you need to shoot these people only 4 times in order to bring them down if they don't have their heal up. And you can even stack booster shot on that if you please, which will buff your damage by a further 13%, meaning that you're going to be doing somewhere in the vicinity of 30k damage per bullet to targets at the armor cap. 30k damage per bullet, effective at a range of up to 60 meters, since that is the effective range of your M1A. Want to know how to make all this happen? Well, let's dive into the details of the build and I'll show you some of the results in more detail so that you can decide for yourself. Alright, so first things first, this set that I'm showing you now is not an optimized set. I have a 191 mask and I'm missing critical hit damage on my gloves. I needed the marksman rifle damage instead. I'm also using blind pieces, which a lot of people are going to call out as being less than optimal versus Hunter's Faith, but this is actually a conscious choice. Hunter's Mark gives you 20% critical hit damage with a marksman rifle, where blind gives you 20% damage on your pulse. Personally, I actually prefer to have the damage on my pulse, since this critical hit damage applies to all weapons, meaning that if I ever need to switch weapons to finish off a target when my rifle runs out of bullets, the bonus damage applies there as well. Yes, it's less damage versus what I could get if I was running with someone with a fully stacked 100% critical hit damage pulse, but I think we all know that that happens so rarely that it really isn't worth gearing around that. I'm also missing deadly on my weapon, which means that along with my gloves, I'm missing a total of around 65% critical hit damage, which is a big deal. And to put that in perspective, it actually costs me around 4k damage per bullet. So yeah, it sucks. Finally, my weapon magazine mod, I've elected to go with weapon damage here instead of critical hit damage, as it essentially equates to around the same DPS as if I went with critical hit damage in this slot, but it means I get more value out of this weapon when my pulse is not up. Even though this gear set is less than optimal, I'm still hitting my most 3 important requirements, which is I hit 2850 firearms for my weapon talents, I hit the armor cap, and I have a decent amount of stamina, bringing me to around 400k toughness, which is really the minimum requirement if you're planning on stepping into the DZ these days. I see plenty of builds that are trying to push even more damage out of the DeadEye set, but they do so at expense of their toughness or their electronics. Some of them go as low as 300k toughness. So their highlight reels look really awesome when they're like two-shotting targets, but what they don't show you is all the footage of them getting completely wrecked by not only players, but also by NPCs who love to wander into fights these days. So trust me, stick with 400k toughness if you're sort of wanting to head into the DZ, otherwise you're going to have a very tough time in there unless you're running with a 4-man gank squad. Another important note is that my skill power is on the lower side of things, but you do need to sacrifice a little bit of skill power because you actually roll critical hit damage on your backpack. That slot is reserved for that. As I refine this build and I get more items, I'll be putting my additional stat points into a mix of stamina and electronics to arrive at more survivability, a better pulse, and a stronger heal, all of which will serve me well in the DZ. Going through the other gear pieces, you'll find that your build will likely end up being quite similar. Armor on your chest is important as it's the maximum amount of armor you can get on any slot, and the protection from elites I have here is helpful given how powerful DZ NPCs are. Your mask should be rolled for skill power, your knees and backpack for critical hit damage, your holster for armor, and your gloves should be both marksman rifle damage and critical hit damage, which is not an easy combo to hit, so good luck with that. For weapon, we're unquestionably going to want an M1A due to its rate of fire. The god roll for this would be a deadly weapon, which is the critical hit damage, and capable for weapon handling. But sadly, I've got brutal on this, and I actually PvE a lot more than I PvP, so I don't want to roll that away. For mods, we aim for accuracy, weapon damage, stability, horizontal stability, and of course, critical hit damage on our muzzle. The more we can get, the better. One important thing to note about this build is your choice of secondary weapon. I cannot stress this enough. See, you're going to go into the Darkzone, and if you aren't fighting players, you're absolutely going to want to avoid using your M1A. M1A ammo is so precious in this build. I've had 1v1 encounters where I have literally blown through like 150 rounds over the course of an engagement and lost that engagement because I have run out of M1A ammo. So your choice of secondary is actually extremely important because you're going to want to use that as much as possible until it's time to PvP. For my money, I'd strongly recommend an L86. This weapon will do excellent damage against all targets with the added benefit of doing bonus damage to both PvE and PvP targets out of cover, whereas an assault rifle, you would only get the bonus damage to NPCs. I'd recommend it, say, over an SMG because while the SMG will do more damage, the way that PvE content is tuned right now, it's generally very unsafe to get up close to be able to use your SMG since they have very low optimal ranges. An LMG has literally twice the optimal range of an SMG, so it's a great choice from both a DPS and a safety perspective. And that's the build, but before we finish up, I just wanted to provide a few useful pointers to you before you head into the DZ. So first up, ammo up. It's really important. Use the Lone Star trick, the police backpack, use ammo mods, just do anything you can to maximize your ammo count because, man, you are absolutely going to run out of ammo with this setup, particularly on a manhunt. You are going to struggle towards in the last minute of your manhunt. You're probably going to be struggling if you've been fighting off enemies. Cannot stress this enough. Get every bit of ammo you can. Secondly, use explosive rounds. Explosive rounds proc every 1 in 5 bullets or so when you're using an M1A, and they literally double your damage when they do. You'll do 60k damage in one shot if it procs if you have a fully stacked build. It's, to be honest with you, really dumb, but hey, like, this is clearly not the worst of the Division's balance problems right now. For now, just use these whenever you can to pretty much end a PvP encounter before they even begin. Finally, if you don't kill your target while your pulse isn't up, consider running away to fight another day. If they survived your burst, then they are probably running a Tanktician's build, and when your pulse drops, you're going to be doing very little damage to this target. Learn to size up the engagement, because if you couldn't kill them when you did have your pulse up, there's very little chance you'll do so when it isn't. I guess the final thing we need to touch on is the balance of this build, as in, like, is it balanced and does it need to be changed? I thought long and hard about this, as I really did want to provide a view on it, since if I'm willing to call it the best PvP gear set, then I should be willing to articulate a view about how well it's constructed from a design and balance perspective. In my view, I definitely think that explosive rounds DeadEye is broken. It's like the old days of the M44 when it just used to be like a one-shot. It's not quite as bad, but in my view, it's close enough, and it just straight up needs to be rebalanced, but I generally think that of explosive rounds more generally. It's just wrong that I can do that much damage by doing something that requires so little skill, so I think this needs to be changed. More broadly, I'm of a mind that this gear set is it's not really that imbalanced, because ultimately the entire DZ and PvP experience is such a red hot mess right now that it actually doesn't feel out of place. And I don't mean this cynically, but I'll be honest in saying that DeadEye feels about right given the current state of the Darkzone. If it isn't a shotgun build one-shotting you or an NPC two-shotting you, it's a DeadEye build three-shotting you. And like, let's be real, the PvP experience in this game needs a lot of work. So in that context, just sort of how dysfunctional the DZ currently is, I actually don't think the DeadEye set needs to be changed. It's not a very sort of stirring endorsement, but there it is. More importantly though, this set currently fills a critical role as a counter to the shotgun meta, something that I think does require urgent attention. We cannot let this game become Call of Duty or Battlefield. This is a tactical RPG shooter, and if we ever find ourselves in a position where one gun or build can literally just one-shot players, then in my view we have a problem. For me, even 4 bullets from the DeadEye set is just too few. It doesn't feel right. But as I've said, we've got much much bigger fish to fry than that one at the moment when it comes to balance in the division. Regardless, DeadEye cannot be touched or rebalanced unless there is a similar adjustment made to shotguns. Otherwise, we are at risk of the shotgun meta completely taking over, which would be bad news for everyone. So that's it, guys. It's a very different look at the DeadEye set versus my PvE review, but obviously this set was designed for PvP usage, and a lot has changed in the PvP meta in just a few short weeks. Where before this set was, was quite good, and it gave you some really great damage. The fact now that everyone is taking 20% more damage, and the fact that shotguns have become so prevalent, makes this set that, in my view, the very best PvP set you can be running with currently, and I'd really strongly recommend everyone gets their hands on it. Those of you looking to farm it can do so at the new Dragon's Nest incursion. Obviously you farm that on heroic to be able to get your 268 version of this, but it also has just a random chance to drop everywhere. For instance, I got my set by just doing the underground and a bit of DZ, so you'll get your hands on it that way. But anyway, guys, that's it from me. I really hope you enjoyed this review, and if you did, be sure to leave it a like. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you can do so now. I know the massive community guys are on holidays at the moment, but we can be sure to expect that when they get back, we're going to start getting a lot of news about survival. I will, of course, be covering the hell out of that, so do look forward to that. Until next time, guys, thanks for watching, take good care, and I'll see you in the Dark Zone. Bye-bye.